Hi, I'm Fergus. I'm head brewer at Adams. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about our New England IPA. So, New England IPA is a beer we started doing, I guess, about 2.5 years ago. It's called New England IPA because it's a New England IPA in style. It's obviously originated from New England in the US, and as opposed to sort of West Coast IPAs, there's a couple of things to note. First is the bitterness level is typically lower. So for a normal IPA, you expected that sort of mouth puckering sort of bitterness coming through. For New England IPAs, the bitterness level is deliberately reduced. Because really, once it's combined with the hops, you want it to taste quite fruity and quite smooth. So you don't want that bitterness. But the other thing that often crops up is the fact that it's cloudy. So in the UK, we've been used to trying to get beer bright for quite a while, quite a few years now, and actually learning how to make a beer cloudy was quite interesting, and quite counterintuitive for a lot of brewers, I think. So the haze for us isn't yeast. I know some people sort of get the haze through yeast, but what we try and do with ours is just get the haze through protein and sort of polyphenols. So the protein coming from the oats or the barley or the wheat in the beer, and then the polyphenols coming from the hops we use. So we use a lot of hops, although we don't want a lot of bitterness. We do want a lot of hop flavor in there, and we select certain hop varieties to give us that sort of juicy characteristic, which I guess is another word that's often associated with New England IPAs. So we're really loving Chinook at the moment, which is a US hop. Which adds lots of pineapple characteristics, which we think work really well in this beer. We have also used some Amarillo. We've used some Mandarina Bavaria as well. So all hops that we're really looking for sort of orange juice sort of flavors really for. And I think Dan, whose recipe this is, has done a really good job. We use our own house yeast now. We did use a New England style yeast to start with, but actually New England style yeast typically are English ale yeast in their history. So all the first batch we did use a sort of New England yeast. The next batch after that we did use our own yeast, and actually we got the same flavors really. So that makes it even more of an Adams beer for us. So it's brewed in lots of the similar ways as normal beers, except we do everything we can to make sure we don't drop out too much protein and we don't drop out too much of those polyphenols during the process, so we can keep it stable and hazy. And actually getting beer hazy is pretty straightforward. It's keeping it stable and hazy is the sort of difficult bit. So you sort of have to relearn everything you've sort of learned about brewing normal beers, about trying to keep the beers hazy. So there's no yeast in there, like I said. It is really just flavor. So if you think proteins and polyphenols are in all beers, but we try and manage the levels to try and manage making them bright really. But the more protein and polyphenol you can leave in the beer, the more mouthfeel, the more texture you get from the beer. And that's what you get with New England. You get this sort of extra smooth mouthfeel, and yeah, I think if you look through that, well, you won't be able to look through it. Yeah, so on the nose, really grapefruity, really citrusy. I think the Chinook and the pineapple sort of flavors that generates really work well in this beer, and it's perfect for a summer's day. Cheers. Mm.